my very first tutorial that I ever made on YouTube was of this crystal cube necklace. Now, I made this with the intention of making an entire set. I did make earrings to go with it, so there is a tutorial on the earrings. People were asking me for a bracelet, and I did make one. However, I never did a tutorial on it because I decided I didn't like it. This is it. I don't know why I decided I didn't like it. I just decided I didn't like it. And so I never made it. The other day I ran across it and thought, you know, it's really not that bad. So I'm going to make a tutorial of it. It's really kind of pretty actually. So this is what this looks like. Before we go any further, these crystals you can get at znetshows.com. They're 4mm crystal cubes. This is the safari green color. I know I'm going to be asked a million times. So that's what these are. Now I'm going to back off again and I'm going to show you the bracelet we're going to make today. This is the one we're going to make today. It's the same thing. However, I used 4mm pearls. I'm trying to give you a close-up so you can see what it looks like. I used 4mm pearls, whereas in this one, I used 3mm pearls. But I didn't have the color I wanted in 3mm, so I put 4mm. So you can use either. Basically, all it is 2x3 crystal roundels, a glass round, either 3 or 4mm, and the crystal cubes, and some 11/0 and 15/0 seed beads. So that's what these look like. I'm going to show you what this one looks like on my wrist. And then we'll go ahead and get started with looking at what we need and then doing the project itself. So this is what it looks like on the wrist. It really is very impressive and very pretty. I don't know why I didn't like it. I guess sometimes you just decide something. But anyway, as I ran across it the other day, I decided, well, you know, it really is pretty and maybe you guys would like to make one. And it's really not difficult. It is time consuming and it does take a lot of beads, however. But it's a fairly simple, straightforward stitch. So let's look at what we need to make this project. At what we will need for this project today. We're going to use 4mm crystal cubes. Zoom in so you can see what this looks like. This is the little cube I'm going to be using, one of the cubes I'm going to be using, I guess I would say. These are little Chinese crystal cubes. They're actually very pretty. For a lot of us, it is cost prohibitive to use this many crystal cubes in Swarovski. They are really expensive and we're going to use a lot in this project. Just like in my crystal cube necklace, when you use this much of a bead, it's really difficult to use a Swarovski crystal cube. So you can get these cubes in strands of 50 for fairly reasonable. I think they're only like $3 or $4 a strand at znetshows.com. You can find them on Amazon, you can find them on eBay, and you can find them at ChineseCrystalBeads.com. And you can get a bunch of them for a very, very good price, and they work up really nicely in this little bracelet and in the crystal cube necklace that I made a tutorial for some time ago. So look for these in Chinese crystal. Okay, these that I'm using are a pink, I think they call them rose, I'm not sure, but they're pink with an AB finish, the ones that I'm going to use. And they're very pretty and shiny, as you can see. Then we're going to use a 2x3 crystal rondelle. This again you can get at ChineseCrystalBeads.com or znetshows.com, Amazon, eBay, wherever you can find these. They are also Chinese crystal. Very difficult to find a rondelle in Swarovski and other brands in this size. So I recommend that you check those two places. Then I'm also using mine in a ruby red color. Then you will need a 4mm round bead, and mine is an ivory colored or cream, ivory or cream colored glass 4mm round pearl. You will also need 11/0 seed beads. This is a Toho, it's a Silverline crystal translucent. Now you don't have to use 15/0 seed beads. I am going to in my fringing on the top of my beads because I find the 11/0 is just a little too big and it has too big of a presence on top of the beads when I make this bracelet. However, if you want to use an 11-0, that's fine. You don't have to have the 15-0s. I'm going to use 15-0s. This is a Toho, my standard galvanized silver tone aluminum permanent finish Toho. Then you will need a toggle clasp or whatever class you choose to use. I'm just going to use this little fancy toggle. Now, you will also need a size 10 beading needle or 12, and you will need 8-pound or 6-pound Fireline, or you can use Nanofil 10-pound or 8-pound. That's what I'm going to use, is the 10-pound Nanofil. It's Berkeley product, and I'm finding that I'm really enjoying using this. I usually always use 8-pound Fireline. I'm finding that I'm enjoying the Nanofil much better. It doesn't fray, it's stronger, it's smoother. It's kind of like using, not Fireline, but the other brand that's Wildfire. It's kind of like using that, but it's not quite as stiff. It's more flexible. So, thread onto your needle 2 wingspans of your thread. This is a very thread-thirsty stitch, so make sure that you have a good amount and plan on extending your thread sometime during the process. Okay, once you have threaded your needle, we are going to start with 2 4mm cubes. So just put a couple of your crystal cubes onto your needle. Bring it down to the end of your thread. You don't have to leave a long tail, but enough to hold on to. We're coming out of this top bead here. Let's go into the first bead we put on our thread and just go through the back of it from the tail side. This will bring your top crystal around and fold it on top of the crystal that your thread is coming out of. Just like in the crystal cube necklace, we're going to do the ladder stitch for the entire base of our bracelet. This is your beginning ladder stitch. Now I'm going to reinforce this and tighten my thread as I do this. So I'm coming out of this bead here. I'm going to go back into my first bead. As I come through, I'll give my thread a little tug. Then I'm coming out of this bead here. I'm going to go back into the bead closest to my tail and pull that tight, pull the tail tight, and then come back through. We're coming out of this bead on the tail side here. We're going to come back through here. And we'll try to keep our thread as neat as possible and try to keep everything as secure as possible while doing this without actually making it too thready. This can get extremely thready. So we're just going to add a bead and then we're going to reinforce. We're not going to sew through it a bunch of times, so make sure that you keep your tension nice and that each stitch is nice and neat with the minimal amount of thread as possible. Now, pick up another bead onto your needle. You're coming out of this bead, go into the opposite side from which you're exiting, and pull your new bead down on top of the bead you're connecting to, and then straighten your thread. Go back up through the new bead you just added, pull tight, straighten your thread, go back to the bead you are connecting to, and then one more time back up through the bead you just added. It still seems like a lot of thread, and it still is a lot of thread, but without at least that much reinforcement, your stitch is going to be sloppy and everything's going to fall apart. So you need to do at least that much. Now let's do this one more time. We're coming out of the bead here. We're going to pick up a bead. We're going to go to the opposite side of the cube from which we're exiting, and we're going to pull our new cube down on top of the cube we're connecting to, straighten the thread. Now when you're pulling a new thread, pull straight. Do not pull against the side of these crystals because these crystals are sharp and they will break your thread. Although I'm using Nanofil and it seems to be much stronger and resistant to that, better than Fireline. However, still pull your thread straight through, not to the side of the crystal, or your thread will be breaking and you'll be messaging me. So come through here and then come back up through the bead we're connecting on, and then straighten your thread and then back through the bead we connected. One more time and then we will go to length. So pick up a crystal onto your needle. You're coming out of this bead here. We're going to go into the opposite side from which we're coming out, and we are going to pull this new bead down against the bead we're connecting to. Tighten the thread by giving it a little tug. Come back up through the bead we just connected. Come back down through the bead we're connecting to, and then back up through the bead that we disconnected. You're going to do this 37 times. Now that will give you just a little bit over a 7 or a 6.5 inch, or let's see, not quite 6.5 inches is what that'll give you with 37 beads. Now I want to make just a little over 7-inch bracelet, not quite 7 to 7.5. So I'm going to make my 37 beads, which will give me just a little over 6 inches, and then by the time I attach my clasp, then I will have the length that I want. Now if you want to make a smaller bracelet, then you will want to reduce the number of cubes you do in this particular step. Measure it on either a ruler or on a bead board, and measure it just an inch shy of the length you want to achieve once the bracelet is finished, and we'll be back. Okay, so I have made my 37 units of ladder stitch with my crystal cubes. This measures just slightly shy of 6.5 inches. So by the time I finish my bracelet, it should be just around 7.5 inches. Maybe not quite, but very close. So once you have gotten to the length that you want, then we'll be coming out of a cube on one end, and we're going to attach one side of our clasp now, so that as we work through doing our embellishments, this side will be finished. When we get to this side, then we can add the other side of the clasp. So what we're going to do to add our clasping, I'm going to do the circle side first, or the round side of the toggle. So I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads onto my needle, and then I am going to pick up a crystal rondelle. And then we are going to drop this down to our work. And you can use a wire protector here if you would like, but that's going to add length to what we're doing. And if you do not attach your clasping to the wire protector as you're sewing it on, just slide it on and then sew your wire protector on, that's going to add even more length because you'll need to use a jump ring. So factor all that in if you're going to change the way you do your clasping from what I'm going to show you. So you've got 3 11-0 seed beads, a crystal rondelle, and then I'm going to go up through my clasp here. Sorry about that. And then I'm going to go back down through just the crystal rondelle. I'm going to pull it through, pull the clasp down to it. I'm not going to pull it extremely tight because I need to get back through so I can reinforce, but I'm going to get it fairly close there. And then I'm going to pick up 3 more 11-0 seed beads onto my needle. And I'm going to go through the other side of the crystal we're attaching to. So we came out this side, now we're going to go into this side and pull down. This is what you should have, just like that. Now you're going to sew back through all of this several times to secure it. You're going to go up through these 3 11-0s, through the crystal rondelle, around the toggle clasp, back into the crystal rondelle, through these 3, and then back through the cube. Do that several times and we'll be back. Okay, so I have reinforced my clasping by sewing through 3 times. Now I am coming out of the little 11-0 seed beads here from coming through my last my last reinforcement stitch. And I'm going to come up into the crystal here now. Back up just a little and pull that through. Now we're going to start fringing through our piece here. So this is going to be the base that we're going to work everything through. And the way we're going to start this is we are going to pick up a crystal rondelle. Then we are going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead. Then we are going to pick up a crystal cube, and then a 15-0 or 11-0. It doesn't matter. Just depends on your preference on what you want it to look like. So, rondelle, 11-0, crystal cube, 15-0 or 11-0. Bring these down to the cube that you're exiting from. Go around the 15-0 or whatever size you're using. Go through the crystal cube, go through the 11-0 and the crystal, underneath the cube, and back through the cube that we were exiting from. Pull tight. Now you don't want this to be so tight that it bunches it and makes it lay all strange. Just no slack. Nice and neat. Now we are going to do the same thing on the other side. We're coming out of this side here, so we're going to pick up a crystal rondelle, we're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, then a crystal cube, and then a 15-0 seed bead for the top here. We're going to drop this down like so. Then we're going to go around the 15-0, then we're going to go into the crystal cube, into the 11-0, into the rondelle, and back through the crystal cube we're connecting to, avoiding the beads on the other side. Do not go into them. And then pull this tight, not so tight that it bunches, but nice and neat, just like so. Now we're going to do 2 more layers of fringing. So we're going to do 3 layers of fringing through each bead on this. It takes some time, but it comes out pretty nice and thick. So now you're going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead. You're going to pick up a 4mm round pearl. You can also use 3mm rounds if you find the 4mm is too much, or you can do every other cube with 3 layers and just do 2 layers, however you want to do it. This can be modified any way you want. But I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a 4mm round, and a 15-0. I'm going to drop it down, and then I am going to go around my 15-0 into the pearl and the 11-0 and back into the crystal cube that I have been fringing through, like so. Now pull your needle through. Again, don't bunch it, but make sure that there's no slack. Then again on the other side you will pick up an 11-0, you will pick up a pearl, you will pick up a 15-0, bring it down, go around the 15-0, go into the pearl, go into the 11-0, and go back into the cube. And as you push through, make sure you do not get any other beads. Just go through the crystal and pull, like so. Now we're going to do 1 more layer. I'm going to use just a rondelle layer. So I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a rondelle, and a 15-0. And this is where I find 11-0s for my fringing to be a little too much. They kind of take over my rondelle. So I'm going to go around the 15-0, I'm going to go through the rondelle, I'm going to go through the 11-0, and then back through the crystal cube. And I'm going to pull everything nice and flush. I'm going to do 1 more. I'm going to pick up an 11-0, a crystal rondelle, and then a 15-0. Get you a little closer so you can see, like this. Bring these down, and then I'm going to go around the 15-0, into the crystal rondelle, into the 11-0, into the crystal cube, avoid all the beads on the other side like so, pull it through, like this. Now we have finished all the fringing we're going to do in our first cube. We're going to go down into the next cube. So I'm exiting the cube, I'm going to go into the next cube, I'm going to pull my thread through, make sure it doesn't get caught on anything, and exits through the cube nice and neatly and cleanly. Now we're going to start our next fringing. You will always start with your cubes so that they are on the bottom, and give the bracelet the proper balance it needs so that it lays correctly. So you'll start with an 11-0. You'll pick up a crystal cube, and then you will pick up an 11-0. Excuse me. No, you won't. None of that. You will pick up a rondelle. You will pick up an 11-0, and then you will pick up your crystal cube, and then you will pick up a 15-0. So you'll pick up a rondelle, an 11-0, let's move out, an 11-0, a crystal cube, and a 15-0. Excuse me for that. Okay, make sure none of your beads are in the way, like so. Go around the 15-0. Go into the crystal cube, the 11-0, and the rondelle, and back into the crystal that we started in. Pull everything nice and neat. And then again, pick up a crystal rondelle, an 11-0, and a crystal cube, and then a 15-0. Like so. Drop them down. Now, it looks like I've got a thready stitch here, so let me pull this nice and neat. And when you come through and you're tightening up your fringing stitch with your cube here, make sure that you don't have any extra thread down inside here right around your beads, because a lot of times the 11-0 will seem like it's taut, but it's not. There's still some slack in there. So make sure that you follow your thread, look at it, and make sure it looks nice before you secure it with your next stitch, otherwise you won't be able to pull it through. Now, go around the 15-0 seed bead, go into the crystal, go into the 11-0, go into the rondelle, go back into the crystal cube, avoiding the beads on the other side, and pull through. Then we will pick up an 11-0, a 4mm round, and a 15-0. I think this would look pretty if you use some different crystals too. You could use a combination of things. You could get your bead soup out and just use whatever you want to fringe through. Just make sure that your crystal cubes are on the bottom, and then fringe whatever you want on top of it. It doesn't matter. So then go around the 15-0 seed bead, go through the pearl, go through the 11-0, go back into the crystal cube, avoiding the beads on the other side, pull your needle through, and then again pick up an 11-0, and then pick up a pearl, and then pick up a 15-0. My dog is crying in the background. He wants my attention. Sorry, guys. I will pay attention to him in just a second. We'll go around this 15-0 seed bead, into the pearl, into the 11-0, back into the crystal cube, and pull through. Now, as you do this, you need to arrange it so that your little fringing beads are on top of your crystal cubes. So make sure they're on the bottom and all your little beads are on top here. We're going to do our last layer in this particular cube. So we will pick up an 11-0, a crystal rondelle, a 15-0, and drop it down. Now, as you do this, it gets more and more cumbersome to get to your beads because there gets to be more and more beads, plus your thread will get caught. So just do it slowly. Pay attention to what you're doing because it does get to be kind of too much. So go around the 15-0, go into the crystal rondelle, go into the 11-0, go into the crystal cube. Make sure you're not grabbing any other beads as you come through, and pull like so. And then again, straighten out your beads on the side so that they're nice and poofed the way you want them. Keep your crystal cubes on the bottom. Pick up an 11-0 and then a rondelle and then a 15-0. Drop it down. Go around the 15-0. Go into the 11-0 and then go back into the cube and pull through. Now if you want to do this, you can do it in 3 different passes too. You can go through, put all your crystal cubes on in one pass and then come back up and do your pearls and then come back through and do your rondelles. I just find that to be a little too much. I just want to do it all at once. But you can do that if you find that this is cumbersome to work with all of this fringing. All I'm doing right now is just straightening my fringes up so that I can get over to my next cube without tangling into my fringe. So now I'm going to go into my next cube and pull down. I want to make sure that my crystal cubes on the bottom stay nice and neat, otherwise they'll be mixed in with the chaos on top here and it won't give me the balance to lay flat on my wrist. So make sure that your little crystal cubes on the bottom are on the bottom, like so. Go ahead and do this the entire length of the bracelet. When you have done that, we'll be back. Okay, so I have finished all my fringing and I'm coming out of the very last cube here. But the most important thing I want to tell you about, as I was fringing this through, you will need to make sure that your needle and thread stay on top of the crystal cube fringe. So put your crystal cube fringe on either side like I showed you. Just make sure as you're sewing to put your pearls on and to put your little rondelles on, that you make sure that they stay on top of the bottom fringe of the crystal cube. So guide your thread on top each time. And then as you do them, you'll need to pull them up. If you don't do this, you're just going to have a jumbled up mess. You're not going to have the layering look of the cubes on the bottom and the fringes sticking up on top. You'll just have kind of it all bunched together, which could be pretty, I suppose. But to have this particular look, so that it looks like kind of like you have baguettes out here, you want to make sure that you pull your fringing forward and that as you place them carefully on top of your first fringe of your cubes. Okay, that being said, let's look at where we're at here. So I'm coming out of this very last crystal right here. And now all I have to do is put my clasping on. And so I'm going to do like I did on the other side. I am going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads, and then I'm going to pick up a crystal rondelle, and then I'm going to pick up my other end of my clasp. I don't have a lot of thread, so as I move around to pick up stuff, it's moving. So now that you've come through the clasping end here, move this into frame, then you will go around the clasp into the rondelle. Now I cut my tail off at this end too, I'm sure you've noticed. I cut it off and burnt it down a little bit. Just make sure that it doesn't burn down and go inside the crystal cube, because of course you need to sew through that a billion times. So once you've gone through the rondelle, pick up 3 more 11-0s. Watch all your fringing and go into the last crystal cube again. And try to avoid all this fringing. If you want to, you can always leave all the fringing off the last 2 cubes so that you can do your clasping, but I wanted it to be full there too, so I went ahead and included it. Now I'm going to pull this through, just kind of guide it around all my fringes, and straighten everything out. That's what that looks like. I'm going to sew through it a couple of times, and then I'm just going to come up through my my ladder stitch. If I turn it over, I can see on the back, and I can sew through my ladder stitch. make a couple of half-hitch knots on the thread bridges and tie off, burn your thread down, and we'll be back to take a peek at what we've made. Okay, so I went ahead and secured my end of my clasping, sewed through my work, tied it off by putting little half-hitch knots on thread bridges, and then burned my thread down. This is what the back of the bracelet looks like. This is what the top of the bracelet looks like. I'm going to get you in closer so you can see how pretty they are. And then I'm going to go ahead and put this bracelet on so you can see what it looks like on. Now this did turn out to be about a 7.5-inch bracelet, and that gives me some movement. Sometimes I like it not quite 7.5. My wrist is just under 7 inches, but if I make it right at 7, I don't have quite enough movement. If I make it 7.5, it's too big. So I try to just kind of modify it. So as you're making it, measure your wrist and modify as you make it too. Or if you are making it for someone else, then measure their wrist and modify. So this is what this looks like. This is the clasping, and it's really, really pretty on the wrist. Of course, I just bunched it all up. The nice thing is it pretty much stays, if you don't reach in and bunch it all up, it pretty much stays nice and neat to where you can see your crystal cubes on the outside, your little row on the inside, and your little row. So it's multi-dimensional. It's kind of cool. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one, and see you next time. Bye-bye.